It's the advisory committee, and November 29th. So we're in process. Firstly, I just want to say I expect Mina to also join us. She said she would be here. We had excuses from both Mr. Rooney, Ms. Cook, and Ms. Malinowski, Chelsea, because we rescheduled this meeting for tonight. We have to just press on. I did not make it for Tuesday night. I had a crisis last week. I attended to that, and it was more, and this just took second position. So, but we're pushing on as much as we can with the meetings. I do want to use this opportunity. I've never had it yet. Dorianne is here, and one of the reasons I may not have missed the posting last week is if she was vice chair last year. I just have to use this opportunity to say that I had an incredible amount of support from her last year, and it's the first time I see you here, and I just want to say thank you very much again. It was an incredible amount of organizational support. Much appreciated. Won't forget it. We're going to move straight on to the budget for 2020. And we got John. You want to take the table? I mean, there's so much information here. Number one. Number two, it's still in process as to where the budget's going to end up. And so that work is still being done together with Mark. Mark, welcome here, and everybody else as well. I forgot to say that. Tim, Mark, Jim. So this is not the final budget.
Exactly.
But there may be some changes, but the bulk is not going to change. Please use this opportunity to take us through this. And I would suggest at this point in time to focus on the major points and on the sensitive points. And go through it with force. So you take the lead.
Okay. Actually, I think
I just want to tell you, we don't have the whole night for it.
That's okay.
It's a lot of data.
I think the most important issue we should really address right out of the gate is what's going on over the library, actually. As I'm sure you are all aware, we had a major flooding issue a couple months back, and we have been working with Weston & Sampson on already doing some engineering, trying to figure out where water issues were coming from previously. This just happened to coincide with that work that was going to be done. Weston & Sampson has made some discoveries over there, and we would like to come up with an engineered solution that can limit to the maximum extent possible the possibility of this happening again in the future. That being said, in order for them to engineer out an actual plan, if you will, we are looking at a $22,600 engineering cost for design at this point. From the monies that you had granted me last year through town meeting for the engineering for the water study, I should have about $3,500 left, we figure, and I would like to take that money, put it towards this engineering, but we will be coming forward to you most likely for about $19,000 in for transfer of funds. We're going to need additional funding, reservist transfer. So they are estimating, with a conservative contingency put in, the project could be anywhere up to $375,000 to $450,000, which
Say that again.
$375,000 to $450,000. That is their estimate with the contingency put in, but again, until they can engineer this out and design it properly, you are looking at an estimate.
Can you give us a timeline on when the estimate would become a quote, firm figure?
They would like to proceed as soon as possible, so if we go for reserve fund transfer, I'd like to get them going, and hopefully within a couple months you can have something done.
So are you requesting?
Not this evening, as this was not on the agenda for tonight, but there will be a request coming forward.
If this is urgent and it needs to be done, get it to us. We have,
Absolutely.
The next meeting is December 5.
Absolutely.
Adrian, could I just ask one quick question about the library?
On that point.
There was a fundraiser several years ago to work on the flooding problem it was from the Southborough Library Fund, which isn't under your, or our control. Do you know if there's anything left of that?
This is the first I've ever heard of a
Yeah,
fundraiser.
maybe I shouldn't have mentioned it.
No, it's okay.
I don't know what I think they did some work, and there wasn't a lot of money, but there may be some. You could ask.
Okay, yeah, no, I'll gladly ask.
And one more thing is, when that addition was built, I'm sure you know, but the board may not know, that the state refused to pay for it because they said you will always have flooding. And they said that the water would run down from Marlboro, right down, exactly what's happening, right down 85. And the librarian at that time decided that it should be built anyway and raised the money, got the town to pay for it. So I sure hope we could fix it, but unless you raise up on stilts, I don't know how that's ever gonna work out.
Again, the goal is to minimize to the greatest extent possible the possibility of it ever happening again. Yeah, I definitely, I feel your concern.
I do have a question, one more, on this topic. Can you tell us what the situation is regarding insurance paying for this?
Yes, this is being covered through insurance, not the work that I'd be coming to get money for. The interior repairs right now are covered through our insurance plan.
Okay, let me ask this, because on the discussion that I had with you, part of the repair work would include work outside the building, not just inside the building?
That's not repair, that's not damage repair.
No, okay, but what about the, mitigation in order not to have a flooding again?
That is not covered by insurance.
Okay, but is there a plan to do that?
That's what this study would be for. This money would be used to come up with the plan to do it, and that's what that 375 to 450, I believe the number is.
So let's just make sure we understand. So there's the 375 to 455 is for interior repairs.
No, exterior mitigation work.
That's the mitigation work.
Yep, to help prevent it from
Okay, so
happening in the
it's the
future.
same concept, the
Yes.
same thing we're
Yes.
talking about. The interior work, do you know how much that is that the insurance is paying for?
We don't have a final figure yet. It is quite costly. I can let you know that much right now without a final figure.
What is the estimate?
When I spoke to the insurance agent, we're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Let's move on to the rest.
Okay, basically with capital too, if you look at the waterproofing of the basement, we already had earmarked a $100,000 request for this year. That, of course, would be going away and rolled into whatever that mitigation cost is gonna be.
Are you referring to a document?
Yes, the capital plan.
Okay, let's go there.
All right. Sorry about that. That would now become part of it, yes.
Okay.
So basically, floor coverings and paintings, as anyone who's been in the library knows, it's in desperate need of that. New air conditioning unit. Currently, right now, we are running on one compressor at the library, so we're basically gambling at this point. So we do need to upgrade the system. That is well past its time, and by the time you're through replacing a compressor, you almost should have bought a brand-new system. So it's time to take care of that at $65,000. We are going to push the new boiler out one additional year. I'm confident we can easily go a year with the boiler at this point. The goal was to try to update the whole HVAC system at once, but given the budgetary situation we're in, I think it's prudent to push it out a year. We are looking at a new roof on the library as well. Basically, right now, we have what's called a ballast roof. It's rocks that hold down rubber. We don't use them in New England anymore. The goal is, right now, as you see, we have earmarked here $275,000. The goal is we're working with CPC in the hopes that we can have CPC fund the historic portion of the building. That would leave us with only the newer section of the building to re-roof. That being the case, we would expect this number to come down substantially, but until we get a breakdown of the actual installation costs, I cannot give you that figure. I would just be making it up at that point, and it would be unfair to do that to you. But I would expect that number to come down substantially if indeed we can fund the rest through CPC. because there is another facade restoration project there, and we're looking to roll it all into it. Finally, let's see, which one does that leave? South Union painting and maintenance, I'm also going to push that out a year or so. That's something that does not have to be done tomorrow. Again, given the budgetary state we're in and the water issue over at the library, I see the need to cut back where we can this year. So you will be seeing some adjustments to capital coming through, and that is what I would expect to see coming through. I sent over a copy to Brian today, so you guys should have that in the very near future.
So let me ask you, so because of the library, you are going to delay other projects?
Yes.
Be specific about the ones you want to delay?
One of them was the library boiler. We were going to replace the boiler because we are replacing the air conditioning compressing system as well. But we can go another year, I am confident, on the library boiler. It is an older unit, but boilers can go a very long time. So it's not one of those things we are under the gun to do. So we do have a little wiggle room with that one. The other project is exterior painting renovations down at the South Union School. Again, we're getting to the point we need a little bit of paint work, but I don't believe another year is going to make or break the building by any means.
I want to suggest that when you do the budget, that we have notes of what it is that should have been done, that you are kicking down the road. So when you do the budget, we would like to, it would be good to just point that out so that we have a feeling for what it is that is moving over. With agreement?
Very good.
Otherwise, we're going to lose track of it.
Okay, yeah, no.
So, and or make sure that it gets into the capital budget plan that Brian, he has one for 10 years.
Yes.
Just make sure that this then goes into the next year.
Yes, and I did send that to him today. It will be
But-
moved over.
But with a note that it is going beyond what was the planned replacement date.
Okay.
Or whatever. Okay? If there are more items.
Okay.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Hi. So as far as the heating system in the library goes, is that forced hot air? Or what?
That one there is forced water. It has a water radiant system. On perimeter, we have an air conditioning air system. It does have some, what they're called VAV boxes, where they reheat some of the air, but it does have a hydronic loop, we call it, around the building.
Got it. But where I was going at with this, if it was a forced hot air system, I was just wondering if you would consider options such as some sort of geothermal heating, for which there are some state incentives, I believe. I just want to throw that idea out there. And
Yeah, I don't think it would be the best situation for that particular building. But if it was air, then it would definitely change that scenario.
okay, thanks.
You're most welcome. If you'd like, we can move on to real quickly on to other operation support. Basically, the fuel budget.
Just let us get there. Okay?
As you see with the fuel budget, heating oil, we have basically, we go by the gallons used in an actual closed-out fiscal year. For fiscal year 17 and 18, we were paying $1.75 a gallon. In FY19, we're very lucky. We're paying $2.38 a gallon. We get an extremely low price this year compared to what most people are paying. We have budgeted $2.90 a gallon for FY20. We're in that area where we could be really good, or we're not going to lie, we could be a little short. This is one of those years where fuel is a little unstable. I think we're going to be okay with it. That being said, because I know Frank had posed a question earlier tonight, that's why I'm giving you guys a little more depth than I normally give you on this. But the numbers should be okay. The natural gas, what we also do there is we take an actual, being FY18, and I put in an inflationary safety factor of 10%, because you have to remember, it's a 2-year change, because we're looking at 18, we're looking at 20, so that's 5% a year, which I consider reasonable for natural gas increases. Again, we're trying to protect the town from under budgeting and over budgeting at the same time. Propane, same situation. It has a safety factor. It fluctuates and varies greatly. We've had years where it's below $1 and $1.66 in the same year. So there's a great swing on propane as well.
Do you buy on a contract basis or do you buy on spot?
We are on, I believe our propane comes through a state pricing, actually. If I recall on that one. And the natural gas, we have a municipal rate, actually. I think it's the 07 rate. Don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure it's a 07. And so basically straightforward, and you will note too, we had to increase on the next budget. You will be getting an update from Brian on this as well. You will note that cell phones are going up additionally. The police need to add 3 additional cell phones, so you will notice a couple $1,000 increase in the cell phone line. We just found that out in the last day or so, so that's going to be coming down the road as well. And finally, regular operating budget. Pretty much straightforward. If anyone has any questions on operating, feel free to ask.
Oh, yes. Anybody had questions or comments on the previous,
Absolutely.
So the DPW, the electric usage there,
Yeah.
can I just ask you to speak to what's running off of electricity there? Noting that we're averaging somewhere between $12,000 and $16,000 a month.
You are probably looking at the combined with the streetlights.
Okay.
Which exact page are you on? Let me make sure I'm on the same one with you.
4th page of the other support.
2, 3. Yep, DPW includes the streetlights in that.
okay.
And that's a very, very large number of streetlights.
Okay.
Are the streetlights what streetlights do we have?
All throughout town, all your roadway lights.
What kind of lights,
Oh, right now,
technically?
they are the older technology right now. I am actually working with National Grid now, talking to them about potentially converting them over to LED. Again, as we're a green community now, we need to start making some of these changes, so you'll be seeing some of those conversations coming up very soon.
And as they replace broken lights, are they LED that they're replacing
I
with?
don't believe they do that actually until the town gives them a go-ahead to go with LED.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I've never seen one replaced here that I've noted with an LED.
So who replaces the light bulbs?
National Grid,
They replace it?
yep. Right now, we're under, National Grid takes care of it right now, yep. And if we did a change through National Grid, they would take care of the LED ones as well.
Well, I would encourage you to tell them to, I don't know whether there needs to be an agreement for this. I mean, isn't it within your authority to tell them to replace them with LEDs as they go on?
Where street lighting could be a touchy situation, that's something we will have open discussions with.
With who?
Most likely Board of Selectmen.
So, because I don't know what aspect of the discussion is touchy.
LED conversion in streets, some people love it, other people hate it. It's a hot button topic
The
for all
shade
towns.
of the light and the
Yes,
impact.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm surprised at that, but that's another one. Okay, let's go to the operating budget. Do you want to walk us through what you think is important, and we'll pick up from there?
Basically, the operating budget, we worked out, if you look on the last page of the operating, you'll see the formulations I generally use to extrapolate what we're spending, what we're projecting for the next year. That's pretty straightforward. You'll notice under the salaries areas, there is a stipend for energy manager in there. We're working right now with the town for the green communities work that I've taken on over the last few years for compensation for the green communities work. That's the biggest change in the budget. Outside of that, everything else is pretty much straightforward.
Let's just go back. Let me ask you, if I don't, I'm sure somebody else will ask you, so in this budget that we are looking at,
Yep.
I want you to tell us what it is that should be replaced if you had a maintenance schedule, or what should be done that is not in the budget because of trying to reach certain targets. What is not in here that should be in there? I mean, what are we missing, if there were anything?
With my department, I don't run into that situation as much as other departments because we also have the capital maintenance article, which gives us the leeway that as things break throughout the year, we have the funding to address things as they come along. Because as I'm sure you're aware, in facilities, you don't always know what's going to fail until it fails. And we're not talking major capital items like $50,000, $100,000 items or like the septic system a couple years ago. Those are outstanding items that you don't know when they're gonna let go, but they do. So we are very fortunate to have that fund, so if we have a medium-sized item that goes, we have the funding. It lets us maintain the buildings while also addressing smaller capital issues that happen along the way. So the way we're set up works very well for us, actually. It allows us to do what we have to do generally without being painted into a corner when running out of money 2 months into a year if something does break serious.
Questions? I can recall last year's meeting, we had quite a discussion about toilet, bathroom facilities. We talked about certain things at the senior center.
Yep.
Why don't you give us an update as to where that, what happened regarding that?
The architect has been out, he's taken the measurements on the building, and he's drawing up sketches. He's actually working on the sketches now for designs of what things would look like. He's doing the elevations and such.
What is the timeline and, when and funding for that?
Well, you've funded the engineering for the design already, so that's already funded. Timeline, I would expect to have something in the next month to 6 weeks, I'd say. He's finished up measuring a week or two back, so he's usually pretty quick with, sketches.
Okay, so where are you gonna get the funding to actually do it?
Again, if we decide to go forward with it, again, the sketches would have to be presented to the proper bodies, and they'd have to decide which portions of a project or they would like to do or not like to do, and then it would have to go before another town meeting.
So it will not go before the next town meeting, it's not in the budget?
Not for FY20. FY21, it's in the a capital plan for FY21. We have a placeholder number in there for 21.
I thought the situation was kind of urgent, that we need the bathroom, that we need the facility. So my question would be, past you, maybe, Mark, is there any way we can do a holder on the, can we do something in order to, if we have a good estimate, to actually get agreement that that can be done?
In fiscal '20? No,
Absolutely not.
no. You could take a look at potentially doing it as a capital exclusion.
Yep.
And doing it, as excluded debt, but
Too little.
we'll have that conversation, in the next couple of weeks, but I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so. We're gonna have some decisions to make.
it's very small to put in there.
Yeah, but a lot of small things make up a big thing.
Okay,
It's actually not that small. It's almost $500,000.
Oh.
It's a large project.
okay, pass,
That's why we didn't do it this year. I knew I had the library roof coming.
pass.
Okay.
When we look at facilities, I also am looking back a little bit, so at DPW, the building down there, those doors.
Yep.
There are certain things, we have some really bad situations in some of our buildings.
Mhm.
Tell me, so, these things have been on the map in the past, and I don't see it.
The problem we had with the doors, we had a very hard time when we originally came to you for the money. We were told by the door company that we could basically just put up the larger doors. Well, after the money's approved and we go out and meet with the architect, we were informed at that point, well, we're gonna need stamped engineering plans before we'll change the doors. It has literally taken up till maybe a month or so back where we actually got a letter from the company who built the building saying that we do not have to make structural changes. Now, we still need one adjustment to that letter to make sure that it is accurate, so with any luck, we can do it right in the beginning of the spring. That's been the big issue. We couldn't just open it without knowing.
Okay. So it'll still be done in
Oh,
this
yeah.
fiscal year with the money that
We're
was
hoping it's
appropriated?
done before we hit the new fiscal year, yeah. I really want to get that one off the radar.
Any other items, like, I mean, I can remember, just like, these are two of the items.
Mhm.
What else was there, if anybody else can remember? You know, here are two items that was in the past, I mean, you know, no update on it. Are there any other items like these where there's an update maybe?
What was the second one for an update?
No, the one I had was the.
Oh, the
was
bathrooms, yeah,
was
that's
the
for this
senior
fiscal
center,
year.
Which was a big, you
No,
know,
the only other
it was a
ones-
major discussion last week.
Yeah, we're working on the ones for this year still.
Okay, so that's,
Um,
are there any other items that are?
Long-term outstanding, I don't believe so. Not long-term.
Can I ask you about this building, the windows?
The windows right now are on hold again. Looking at another plan, meeting with someone on Monday again to come through and look at VRFs for this building. Gonna try to do it through Green Communities somehow, working into a National Grid Project Expediter project. It's a bit of a tricky situation. We were hoping to go with an ESCO plan, and until we get a full IGA back from our ESCO, we're kind of in a limbo on the windows until I know for sure what's going on there.
Okay. Any other questions? Why I'm asking all the questions here tonight. Good questions? Well, the problem is, I'm sure I don't remember all of them. Did you have a question?
I did not.
You're welcome. Can you use a microphone?
Oh, Dorian Jasinski, 33 President.
Microphone.
Michael, can you hear me?
She records it.
Dorian Jasinski, 33 Presidential Drive. Excuse my voice, I have bronchitis. The senior addition,
Yep.
is there any way to break that into two parts? They desperately need the bathrooms. So I understand there's an addition coming off of the front. I can understand putting that off. But the bathrooms, when the senior center is fully active, is a serious issue. There's one bathroom there for everybody. Is there any way of breaking that into two parts and just putting the bathroom section in? Do we have a cost on that yet, or?
Not only is there a way to do it, that is what I have requested of the architect, actually.
Okay,
I asked, I want to see it in various different phases so they have options to choose from.
okay, thank you.
You're most welcome.
John, you're getting off light tonight. Can I ask you, just before you go, so have you been still working on the budget? What are you looking at?
As
Figures.
in,
You are still looking at the budget.
oh, yes, yes.
May you share with us how much are you looking at? Have you been instructed for a certain amount? Or are you looking at it yourself? Or what is the goal?
We don't have an official target number from the Board of Selectmen yet. They're meeting next week, and we will have more clarity at that point. Once we have that number, we can work with our numbers.
Good answer.
My mother taught me, just tell you the truth, and you got no problem.
Yes, I do want just all the members to, while we're at that point, that you hear it now from the, right from where the tire hits the road, and that is that the Board of Selectmen's meeting next week will be critical for us to see, from that point on to see where we take position. And then we will go through this in more detail. But having the documents now for us and as public, we can all, in the meantime, everybody, us, plus the public who have seen it, can look at it and can work on it in the meantime. Thank you very much, John. If there are no more questions, I want to make sure. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Karen, you're welcome. with the old doors. Yeah. Again, you were not here when John started, but it's a ton of information. It's a lot of data. And it is preliminary.
Yes.
In the sense that, no, based on what he just said as well. So why don't you take us through this the best way you can? Some of the parts are not that easy, if one just looks at it, it's complicated. Not that that you complicated it, but it's a lot of information. So take us through it the best way you can, use the time to, in other words, see it as also, educate us. We're all busy, we don't have time to look at all the T's and, everything that's got to go on. So take us through it first at your leisure,
Okay, so,
wherever you want to start.
all right, well, let's start with the tax base budget. That seems to
Which
be
budget?
easier, the tax base. It's not the water, right? The water should be changing to enterprise at the town meeting, there's an article, right?
Yeah,
So, so the tax base budget, we've always kept them separate, but now the water looks a little different because there's debt in that. So in the tax base budget, it's basically what I tried to do, I did a level service budget, and the big items that you see as different is that, because of the issues with China and the, recycling, we've had free recycling for, since we've had the compactors up there, so it's gotta be 10 years now. We have to pay for recycling now. We're about 20 grand is what, we would have done this year, but we didn't start right the first couple months of the year, we didn't have an issue. So, I have about $25,000 expected in there that, in the trash number, which is just for recycling, and then it also has to go obviously up a little because of, our tipping fee does go up each year a little bit.
just on that point,
Yes.
just for information, because I don't think everybody knows it, but what's happening is that all the recycling goes basically to China, who have said that they will only accept in the future, I think it's 1% or less, what's not supposed to be in there.
Yes,
And this is not happening, and they are charging for it now, and these fees are coming back. And that's why there's a fee,
right,
in
and,
principle, and why there was not a fee before.
right, so, our stuff, our recycling was taken by Harvey for free, and, they now have, if you go over there and you look, they've got like a huge stockpiles of stuff, because they're, everything's getting rejected. So,
Just tell us, which worksheet are you looking at?
so I'm looking just at the no water budget form, so the, tax-based DPW budget.
Hang on.
The second tab.
Yeah,
Let's make
tab
sure-
2, second tab, so it's budget summaries, and then there's the no water budget form.
Are you looking at 400? Which, I want to make sure I know.
Yes, 400 DPW FY '20, it says, which,
That one?
should be the
Okay.
one that you had sent,
Yep,
and it's the second tab,
no water budget.
yes.
Okay. It's fine.
So, the contracted snow removal, I put that up, we haven't increased the amount that we've given to the contractors in many years, so we were just putting it up to $2.50 an hour,
Question,
yes.
was that the contract or was that total cost for snow removal?
That's only for the contractors who plow for us.
Yeah, okay.
So our snow budget is not a budget separate, it's integrated into this. And then our salt and sand, I actually just brought that up to where we usually, basically where our 3-year spending is. That's more the average to it. We're using treated salt because everybody in the area is, and it does work better. And we don't want everyone driving in and saying Southborough roads were the only roads that were bad. So obviously they have to deal with that. And then the other line item that I brought up a lot, which we had, is the tree experts. And right now we have a 1 year, basically if you are worried about a tree in your yard and we look at it, it's our tree, it's a town tree. We put it on a list for removal, but it's about a year before you'll see us back there with any kind of equipment. We only have contractors who do it, and it's just, we have just such a backlog, and we really just don't have a lot of money. It doesn't, this doesn't do, it does about 3 weeks worth of, when you end up needing a crane crew, you'll get about 3 weeks, 4 weeks out of this. And we need to, if there is emergency tree work where we can get the stuff that falls into the road and we can push it to the side, but sometimes the butts and everything we can't deal with. So we end up having to have the crew come in for that too. So that's up. The 7% budget that the selectmen were looking for cuts like 80 grand out of this, so a lot of that will be moving around and not being in here. If we, the tree experts is probably one of the spots we'll have to take from. Cause it's I don't have to, maybe it's a 2-year wait at some point, but I can't, I can spend it until to a level and then just stop spending. A lot of the other work we have to do, I can try to stop throwing away the trash, but what are we gonna do with it, right?
Yeah,
So,
this is an operating budget.
yes,
It's really work that has to be done.
yes.
So tell me, what is there that, you're not gonna remove, not gonna do the trees, not gonna do, trying to understand, so
Right,
if it's an
so-
operating budget, what is it that you can cut down?
Well, and that's just it, we have to find a spot. The budget is, the overall budget's just too high right now for the town to, all the budgets, and we need to find spots, so. I haven't really looked at it, because we only got our marching orders, but it needs to, we'll have to do some, and like I said, the snow, you don't want the snow to go up too much every year, because you can't underspend it. There's a whole process with that gets to be a pain, and Mark understands that better than I do.
Hang on. Snow removal is the one item
That you can
by state
overrun.
bylaw, which is not contained by a budget.
Correct. So you can overrun it, however, you can't budget less than you did the year before. So you just have to you're.
Okay, so I understand.
Right, yeah,
You cannot budget than the year before.
correct.
Yep.
So, and, we do keep it kind of tight. It's just, I think we've asked,
Just on that point, I just want to point out to the committee members that don't know, that in principle, the Finance Committee or Advisory's reserve fund, one of the main purposes of it actually is for snow removal.
yeah, and I
and
think
not
we've
for-
kept it for 3
and
years
not
at
for
least.
And not for other users.
So, yes, so that is one of the spots, but that we could go lower, but again, you can't go so low, and you also don't want to go so low that you're automatically tapping the advisory fund. You know what I'm saying?
You want to predict.
You want to be close. I don't want to be
I,
horrible at it, right?
again, we will take a position on the budget after the selectmen. So we are looking at it independently. You have an operating budget. We would like to know, we want to know, when you cut it. We want to have a report, we want back from you in some form or another.
What I'm
In a
actually
line next
cutting.
to it, so when you change this from what it should be, go a column next to it on the right-hand side. And specifically point out what it is that you're taking out because you have to,
Yep,
so that we can understand that.
okay.
Everybody agrees with that?
Sure.
So that we can see where that's at.
Does
Thank
sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
does anyone have questions on this part of the budget?
Just hold on.
Grounds maintenance,
Yes.
can I just ask you to speak to what that is?
Yes, so, with grounds maintenance, we take care, we have a contract for that, it's the mowing contract. It mows all the town buildings, it mows all the fields, all the school buildings, the cemetery. It also handles, the mulch, the spring cleanup, and the fall cleanup at all those same properties. So the schools, basically, we do all the schools as far as the outside of their buildings. And then so any town-owned property, whether it's school, town, water town, or town. I mean, the water guys do really, they pick up the leaves, they do it on their own, actually, so. And they mow themselves.
Just want to make sure we understand the 3 experts which you are increasing. Is that for the backlog of work, or is that for what you think you're going to need?
That's to chip away at the backlog, so that then we can eventually, in a few years, I think we'd get to the point that within the year you ask, you'll be able to get your tree taken care of. Well, a rolling 12 months, right?
Okay. Right. So the backlog has to be done, or does not have to be done? Are the trees lying somewhere else? Because they're not in our street anymore.
Yes,
guys were
right.
working.
Yes, some of them just come down too, during a storm, and
So-
then that's taken care of too, so.
So what is it, how can you have, where's the backlog?
So we have a list of trees, they're throughout town, and I mean,
Okay, okay.
that's the problem. The streets are tree lined, but a lot of those trees, the moths really affected it. They couldn't come back. The moths and the drought happened, and they tried to push another set of leaves, and then the moths happened again, and it really wreaks havoc on them. Two seasons of that, a lot of them didn't.
So basically, these
Farewell?
are dangerous trees that need to come down at points
Yes.
where they shouldn't be. Okay.
Right.
Questions on this? Absolutely.
Yeah, back to the question of the recycling. So there's nothing that town residents can do themselves, right? So it's not as if we could reduce the amount of contamination in the recycling hoppers. It would the entire neighborhood. I mean, all the neighboring towns also would have to do the same thing. Is that right?
Yes, so it actually has to be everybody, and I will say that, because when we bring things to Harvey's, they'll reject a load if it's dirty or over-contaminated, and our residents are very good about keeping everything separated, and not putting, like, dirty ketchup bottles with all the ketchup still in them and stuff. Like, we seem to have a pretty good waste stream, and we don't get a lot of complaints from Harvey at all, so, I actually think our residents are doing pretty well, but it really comes down to, like, just the whole barge load that they send, and I think it's like 5% is what they've been sending, and they want it down to 1. I think it's that way.
It's 1%.
Yeah, so it's just, I think basically they can, so they will, right?
Absolutely. It's open season.
Karen, what is the other purchased services? What makes up that?
Okay, so that's kind of a weird catch-all. For us, we have some weird stuff in that. I say weird because it's stuff that we have to do, but the biggest item we have right now is police details in there. That it takes up the biggest lump of money. And obviously, we have to pay those. I do need to try to work out a policy, I think, with the police chief, because sometimes we're having to use details when we most likely would not need them. The rate for details probably will go up because they have a new contract this year, so I have the old rate in, but, it's all dependent on how often we have to use them. We also have in there, we clean out the catch basins, that's in a contract, because we didn't get a truck one time, we used to do it. So we've been contracting that. We have contracts for pest control up at the transfer station for rats and mice, and so it's kind of that catch-all of those contracted services that you don't see somewhere else. And it's like I said, it's stone wall repair sometimes, like, so it's kind of weird stuff that pops up too. There's a certain amount allotted for it, and, like for a stone wall repair, we might not end up with one, but it turns out that, you know, something else, like we end up fixing some fences or something that broke, so, that ends up, and it's weird because our insurance doesn't pay for fencing. So we've hit that a few times recently with
Questions?
trees.
Anybody?
I have a few in the capital
Sure.
items, but,
Well, we're not there yet.
Oh, okay,
so I can
sorry.
wait.
The same book that we are looking at, there's the summary, you now addressed the second one, which was no water, right?
Yes.
Can you go to the salaries budget, which is the next tab?
Okay.
It-
How's it
Just
work?
help me to understand it.
So,
Because when I look at it, you have different sections here, and then you have hours allocated.
yes,
And so I look just at yours,
yes.
and I don't think, I mean, do you work that many hours? It's what I'm just saying.
Right, no,
You
so
you
you're,
allocate, you
if you
allocate,
print it, you'll see, it's actually 3 pages. So the first page, the top, is just the aggregate of water and highway, right? So tax and non-tax. So everybody shows up as 40 hours on that for 52.2 weeks.
yep,
So now, so it's sort of an irrelevant one, but I do it as it's a check for me that I can make sure that I've got everybody in for 40.
but if I look at number 2 and 3, just to take you
Right.
as an example, I don't want to pick on you,
No, so,
but you have 16 hours,
right, so we do 20, so
yeah, then it makes sense,
24 a week
yep,
of my time comes out of tax, and 16 hours a week of mine come out of non-tax, out of water.
yeah,
So that works out to be 40, right? And then, but the thing is some of my people change mid-year.
yeah.
So they get a step, right? And so the steps, that's based on, so if they get a step in on August 1st, then they'll have 4 weeks at one rate, and then they'll have 48.2 weeks at the other rate, right, at a higher rate. And so it looks like they've got 40 hours and 40 hours again, but the way the actual multipliers in there are is that it's just 40 hours at that rate for that amount of weeks, and then it, you know, and it adds it up, so you end up with 52.2 weeks.
You have the spreadsheet in front of you?
Yes,
Let's go to line 86.
in the aggregate, okay,
Yeah, the top one.
yep,
Line 86.
My new
I just want to
employee?
notice that you didn't total to the right column. And I'm not trying to be picky. What I'm saying is just check that your totals are correct, and your control column totals at the bottom there don't add up. And so I just saw that.
oh, okay, so
Yeah, yeah.
they
If you
don't
go look,
have,
you look at your control lines on 95 and 96, they don't tie up.
yes,
Okay, I'm just saying.
Yep.
Just have somebody check it for you. This is, I happen to notice it. I can promise you I didn't
Yep.
look at all of it, okay?
yep, no, that's a good, I wonder what I did there.
I'm sure you will fix it later.
Yep, I'll find that, because that affects a
I'm
lot.
just trying to show off, important. I happen to see it, it was just pick it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you have those two, overtime, I understand, organization chart, very good. I think we should have one for the town too, but. Okay. If we look at the water budget, can you just go to the water budget here?
Sure. So like I said, the water budget is turning into a enterprise fund official versus right now, we've always been treating it like it's a special revenue, right, so we keep it separate. We had a retirement, so there's a little bit of cost savings because we're gonna hire somebody at a lower rate. We didn't go up on any of the costs because the biggest item here is the cost of buying the water from the MWRA. That's our biggest nut on that, in this contract. in this budget, sorry. And what happens is, what we pay next year is gonna be based on the percentage of the MWRA's overall water sold that we used in this calendar year. So I don't know it until next June, they tell us, okay, this is what, we sold 700 billion gallons, and you guys took up 2 million, and that's 0.056 of our overall budget, and our final budget, our water sold, our budget for next year is 17 billion, and so 0.056 is this much money. So that's, and we tend to average around 0.056 for them, I don't know why. But if it goes to 0.057, that's a huge difference for us, it's, because the numbers are so big. But, so I didn't actually, it's been such a wet year, and it had been, we were coming off a fairly dry year, so right now our water payments are actually, they're actually kind of, they're gonna end up being lower this year, so I didn't think we even needed to put more money in, so that was why that stayed even. And honestly, the water budget just, it runs very evenly, because water breaks obviously are overtime, but other than that, it's a very stable thing, so it's a lot easier to predict than the highway end. So that's the way that one works. And at the bottom, the debt service, I really can't speak to that very well because, it's not on that one. That's what, that kind of comes out of the treasurer's office. Well, it doesn't it came out of the treasurer's office.
Yeah, the enterprise fund is what it is. It's basically utility, basically we buy and sell, so it should be. But I want to, this was a discussion about 2 years ago. Fortunately, I can't remember further back than that because I wasn't there, but when you do, are there costs that you incur to support this business, because it is a business, that is somewhere else in your budget?
For water?
That should be allocated to this business, because that's what it is.
Right, so, and I don't know where this number is in the current budget, and I should have checked with Brian, and I didn't think of it. We've always had money come out each year for our, the personnel services that are not salary, right? So insurance and all that, and they allocate pieces of it, and workers' comp or whatever all those things are that get paid out. And so they take, I think it's been about 60,000 a year. I think it's gonna go up to like 67 or something, because when we did the math on it to look at whether or not do an enterprise fund, it came out to be a little bit higher than the 60. I'm not sure where that line item is, or but that comes out. It's not really part of the budget. I think it comes out of the reserve fund. And then basically, the only people who provide us service are ourselves. So the highway provides service to the water, but what happens is so it's in this budget that we, every third bill, the water pays it to highway or to facilities, actually, because electricity.
So where is it in the budget where you allocate that?
So like there's an electricity line item, and you'll see we actually have electricity because we pay it. We pay a portion of the heat, and whether it's usually just an intertransfer to whoever's paying the heat. So like for heat right now, facilities pays that, and they pay the electricity.
So let me make the point, because I want to just make sure we minute it. Costs that are, because you're looking at your own operating budget.
Correct.
All costs that are incurred in this town, and I'm just saying to you because we're looking at the operating side, all costs that are incurred that should be allocated as a normal to this business.
Yep.
Really make sure that gets done, because it can help your operating budget, but it's fair. It's the way it should be. So make sure you look at that carefully.
Yep.
And
I mean,
you can use previous year's figures, you can use a standard allocation, just do it.
We've always allocated it over, even when it was a special revenue. It's all, basically, if we buy truck and water, we buy the truck and water, we pay for the gas out of water. So it's, we've always done it, it's just a matter of, now it's official. But it's hard because we share the building, but, you know, 3 of the 13 people are in the building, right? So there's 3 out of 13 is water. Water's like one garage bay out of all the garage bays. And so we do a quarter of the building. A quarter of any of the building payments go out of water. The USTs, when we change that over, water pays a little bit of that. So you know, when it's a water break, the water guys, you know, we pay out of water for, like, you know, the asphalt and everything, even though.
So what you
it's water.
say is that all costs that should be allocated to this business
Have
is,
been,
it is
yeah.
in there?
Yep, and, yeah, and they just continue in there.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
Can I,
questions,
Just-
please go.
just one question. We spoke with John about it earlier. The electricity usage by the DPW,
Yep.
I think it's a fairly large nut, 15,000 a month on average. And I understand that some of it is for the streetlights in town. Do you have a sense as to how much of that is for the streetlights versus what you're using in your facilities?
I used to have the streetlights ages ago, or not ages ago, back when Phil was still here. And it was about 120,000 a year ended up for streetlights, was what I had in my budget for it. So it's kind of weird, you have like a bunch of little ones, and then it's about 8,000 a year. The months for streetlights themselves go from 8,000 to about 12,000 based on the amount of hours of night and day. Cause it's not metered, it's an estimate based on, they know this type of light takes this much electricity
Okay.
for these many hours, and so they have an inventory of all the different lights we have. And we did, even more ages ago, took out an awful lot of the streetlights, which are, you know, those sodium ones are, the high-pressure sodium, they give you a nice, large circle of light, so you could do that. A lot of the other lights don't do that, they're very pinpointed, and, you know, depending on what ends up happening with our streetlights, we might have to add lights. But like the traffic lights themselves, those don't take up much. So, those are my real lights.
Yeah, I don't mean to hyper-focus on it, but it's a big nut.
Oh, it is very big nut, absolutely. And like I said, that's one of the reasons why we had taken down back in the day, because it was well enough lit. But, you know, like I said, if we move to LEDs, I'm not 100% sure that we don't need to add many lights. And and it's also part of the rental fee, because we rent those from the National Grid. They're not our lights.
So we would add LEDs for the coverage that we'd be giving up by not having the higher usage lights? Is that the right takeaway?
Yeah.
I believe so. We haven't fully discussed it, but we have them in my town, and we have them in a lot of the towns on my way here at night in the dark. And it is very difficult to see with the LED lights, especially in the rain, the way they reflect and everything there. And it's a bright spot, and then it's dark. It's not the same as
Yeah, the
kind of like that
continuity
ambient
is.
light. Yeah.
Got it.
So it's a little different.
And just one point of clarification, the numbers you referred to a few minutes ago, those are sort of historical numbers from some time ago, you said?
Right, so when I used to have them, which was probably 5 years ago, because it has fallen off of the budget.
So it's been a few years, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although it's a contract with them, and I don't think the number has changed. You know, it's been that way, because I had that same number for years and years and years, so.
Thanks.
What's up next?
You probably want to do capital?
Yep.
Okay. You want to go to?
If there are no more questions on the operating side, or we're okay
Have
there.
any questions? Do you want to do tax capital? I think just start with that.
Other operating facilities, DPW, water, so,
Oh, that's right, you have them in a different
are
way.
you talking about the DPW general fund? No. Cap plan, facility,
Yeah, which one are you looking at? Let me just, so I make sure I open the same thing.
tell us
you have.
which one you want to
I,
discuss.
mine's in my other, like, I have it on a budget page, so it's different. So what you sent out, why don't we look at the,
Okay, that's a good idea.
whichever one
I
that
think
works
it's
best
called
for you guys.
cap plan facilities in DPW.
The 112718? Or just this is FY '20?
I don't even see a number on it.
Okay, so let's do FY '20, because I think that's
Yep,
probably the
Yep,
one.
yep,
Okay.
Yep.
What's the total on the schedule that you're looking at?
It says main detail, 945,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
Do you know what that R is for?
The what?
There's an R, purple R. Oh, thank you. I didn't make the chart, so, okay, so, questions you have about that, or do you want me to just run through what things are?
Yeah, just go through them. please.
Okay, so, the hook lift truck, that's, basically a six-wheel truck, and picture it as a roll-off, right? So you can pull different backs up to it, so we can get a dump body, we can get a flatbed, and you buy basically the back, and you can keep changing it out. So it makes it a more versatile truck. We have one, and we were looking at replacing one of our, basic sanders, which is kind of a one-trick pony to some degree, with this. The cemetery tractor, so that's just a regular,
I'm gonna stay with that item
Okay.
because the way I understood it, it really has to be done.
the hook lift truck?
Yeah.
Well, yes, because it is replacing a 2002, we had bought used, that is having some issues. But we have to repair the issues because we gotta get through this winter anyway, so. But yes, the way our capital plan works, and, I guess you guys don't have a copy of it, but basically, it's just each year I keep it to a certain amount of value, and then I try to just, so it says, okay, I think a diesel truck can last, 15 to 18 years, so somewhere in that time frame, I'll put it back into the schedule, that same exact truck, but we have, 6 sanders, so, it happens 6 times, right?
Okay.
Okay, the next one, the cemetery tractor. So 25 grand out of it, of the general fund. The rest will come out of the cemetery funds, because you could do that, obviously, for cemetery stuff. It will get used both places, but it's,
Both places meaning?
both places meaning it'll get used in other grounds locations, because it tends, it's a good machine for,
How much is the total machine?
does, that is a good question, and it's not, let me open my one, hold on. The
Take a
total-
guesstimate, that's fine.
No, I gotta look it up, I don't wanna be wrong, about 65 grand.
So it's about 50-50 to split.
2540,
It's 25-40.
right, 25,000 and 40,000, because it's
Okay.
65.
Okay,
So, all right, let me go back to the sheet we were looking
I
at.
misheard you there.
Then, the body work for the equipment, we've been keeping that in there. It turns out that we end up needing it more often than we would like. It's partly to make sure we sandblast and repaint, so that we can prepare, salt and sand is not easy on our vehicles, and the vehicles that don't get used except for salt and sanding, that those tend to be, we want to keep them going. But we also find that sometimes we can salvage a truck and change the bed on it, or change the back of it, and actually use it for a longer time than we'd expected. Which ends up it's just helpful, because every once in a while you need just a pickup. And, it's easier to just kind of change the back on one, to do that. The plows, that's just something that, when we buy the large trucks, we don't usually buy plow with it, right? Because you can reuse plows for years and years, but we haven't replaced the plows in quite a while. So, you can replace the blades on a plow often, right? You do it during the season, there's just bolt holes and you rebolt the new one on. It's just, these are starting to get to the point that there's enough rust along the bottom, right? So that's why we have them on, but they can make it if we end up having to cut those. Those are not the end of the world. It was just something being proactive a little bit. Northborough Road culvert, that's something that's been sitting under a paved over road plate for, I think, 3 years now. We just renewed our conservation NOI with that. Basically, we had a culvert that collapsed. It basically rotted. It's a old corrugated metal. We put a plate over it and paved it, and there it sits for a few years. I mean, it's staying in one piece. But at some point, we really do need to replace this thing. And unfortunately, that's just something that's going to keep coming up in town, because we have several others that I know are not in the best shape, but they haven't blown through yet, so we're still okay.
How long does the plate last?
The plate lasts a really long time. It's more the paving over it, that's the problem.
So it's safe?
Yeah, it is safe, yep. So the EPA stormwater, that actually, I'm looking at actually just removing that. I've talked to conservation about their role, because we've done our NOI for that. It's something that, it's a permit that we had. It's supposed to be a 5-year permit. 13 years later, the state finally said, hey, okay, now we got the new permit. We know what you're gonna do. And what you need to do is you need to put this NOI in. So we've done that. And so now we just, there's some mapping, there's some sampling, but when it really comes down to it, a lot of the work, I have under the engineering services, I have a contracted person who comes in 2 days a week, and one day they do water, and we pay out of water. One day we pay them out of highway, which is tax. I don't know if you want to call it highway or tax. I'll always come up with the wrong word. And what happens, they're mostly going to end up working on this stormwater. And with that, I also have the ability to use the people back at their firm to help with that. So we're restructuring the way that works so that that's actually just part of that engineering budget at this point. In line item in my budget, in the highway budget.
Which piece is it that's in the capital budget?
So there isn't. So that's actually going to come out. That 150 is.
It's definitely gonna come out.
Yes, yep. And conveniently, it's out in all the versions that are going to the selectmen next week. And then road maintenance, as we all know, is road maintenance.
Okay.
How much of that is spent?
Each year? Oh, so currently, what I usually do is I save it for 2 years. So I end up with 900 or I try to get 900 out of that. We get 430 out of the state. So then I try to keep that saved up. And so that gives us like 1.8-ish million to do worth of work every other year. Right now, I have, we're in a contract this year. I have about half the contract done. I have 500,000 left in that article right now. So that'll get spent. And then all the Chapter 90 I currently have is allocated to a downtown Main Street, not the TIP project, but the downtown part, which also includes a sidewalk on Newton Street. It also includes extending the sidewalk on Corderville and the Deerfoot Road intersection. That's all right now allocated into what I have for Chapter 90. So I'll get new Chapter 90 in February usually, or February, March, like I find out what we get. And then I don't know when it actually comes available, but once it does, then then that will go with the road maintenance, and we'll see if there's enough to do a contract, but because Main Street will be starting, most likely we're gonna wanna lay low give everyone a little bit of time to get used to that project happening before we dive into something else. And, you know, we have a few larger projects that we really need to do. The Cordova Road really needs to get done. That's probably, I'd like to combine some of this with complete streets, also with an article, and get that done. So that's in the capital plan a few years away.
So how much are you gonna, I mean, if you're talking about funds and, I mean, how much is gonna go into road maintenance this financial year in total?
So so FY '20, it probably, I probably would only spend like 20,000 of it, and it would be just for something that, you know, would be, that happened that I had to deal with, or an overrun because the cost of asphalt, you have to put in an escalation clause into your contracts. And sometimes we've been lucky, and it's actually, the cost has been lower. It's like based on the ton of liquid asphalt. But unfortunately, this year, we just bid it on the exact wrong month, and every single bill has come in higher because of the actual cost it's when they lay the asphalt. And if it's more than a 5% change, you pay the difference.
So let me understand, so how much do you intend to?
I don't intend to use any, however, I gotta finish the contract we're in.
Yes.
And if any overruns, I'll have to wait and then do it and finish it in July. But I won't know that until we do our next set of, that they finish up their paving and spraying.
It's clear to you. Any questions?
Is this a wish list, or is this I mean, do you absolutely have to do all the things on this list?
So, with the way like I kind of said, our capital plan is based on a certain amount each year with the equipment. So what'll happen is if we push stuff off, which happens, the following year, something pushes off, and so everything just, you just keep pushing. So it's not mandatory, because usually the stuff is still working, but it's not really a wish list because it's not we're not adding, we're just replacing or maintaining.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the sidewalk plow discussion of several years ago that went on, and then you finally got it, right?
Yes.
The sidewalk plow. I mean, some of these numbers are small, but we have budgets that are asking for small numbers, you know, that we may not be able to fill in other areas. And I'm just wondering if you have to have the cemetery tractor, or if you have to have the big numbers, the hook lift truck, which I don't even, you explained it, but I didn't understand it.
That's okay. And so if we push the hook lift truck off for a year, what ends up happening, and in most of the scenarios that I think with the cuts, it does go away. It moves something next year off. So ultimately what ends up happening is it's kicking the can down the road. So it's not, by chance the hook lift truck this one year is replacing something that we're having a hot mess with. But on the other hand, the body work or the plows, I mean, a lot of that can be put off. You don't want to put off anything, but under this climate, you can't expect to get everything either.
Could you put that in writing?
I know. Well, I will say, I'm always open to the idea that the taxes, you don't want them to go up, you can avoid it, not by the amounts.
Can't always get what you want.
Right, so.
I'm curious why the cost of the culvert on Northborough Road has increased from what was deferred last year.
Well, we re-quoted it to make sure that we had the right cost, and then, for the actual just culvert itself, and so that had gone up. And then we also hadn't, in the original time, and they just kept carrying that number, we hadn't included the cost of installing with a crane, because we can't lift these pieces with any of the equipment we have. So we actually included a crane, an operated crane, as part of the cost of that.
So is the right takeaway that if we had funded the 40,000 requested last year, that would have been insufficient?
It would probably be a little low, because we would have needed a crane still.
Okay.
So, like I said, the cost of the actual culvert went up, but we were planning on, we needed to rent a pump, because it's a large size pump, so that stuff, I didn't bother to re-quote, we're assuming we're still good.
Thank you.
On the capital side, again, if you deviate from your maintenance plan or replacement plan, and you take it out of the budget, we want to see the note next to it.
Okay.
Kicking
Like
down the
when,
road.
when it moves,
Yeah, kicking down the road, we want to
Okay.
know about it, because it piles up, and we already have an issue there, so keep it, we'd like to know what it is.
okay.
Any other questions on the capital side? Okay, what else do you have for us, Karen?
I don't think I have anything.
Okay, we will get back to your budget after we know what position the Board of Selectmen take on the 5th.
Yep.
And we now have enough information, at least, that we can work on it. It's public, we've discussed it. All of us who want to could look at it in the meantime, prepare ourselves, and that we probably will see you again. And
I would
get to
assume
the
so.
final. Yep, these are big budgets.
Yep. No, well, we have very, very tight budget and, I mean, amount of money available, and people are gonna have to cut. We know it's coming.
We'll see.
Well, Mark's been very open with us, and he's let us know. We're aware of the issue, so hopefully everybody will be able to do stuff.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I can't figure out how to shut the computer down.
Mark, you are purple tonight. You might join us. Your shirt is matching it. It's great. Please, if we can move on to, why don't we just do the latest budget process and update from you
Sure.
first?
So as Karen alluded to, the selectmen have directed the finance team to put together 3 scenarios, a 5%, a 6%, a 7% tax increase. I've been working with Brian Ballantyne to put that together. We had a department head meeting on Wednesday where we shared some of that information with the departments, and just to give them an update as to where we are with things. I'll be meeting tomorrow morning with Brian and with Board Chair Lisa Braccio, just to kind of go over, here's the presentation you're getting Monday night, any information that you're looking for. Again, we're looking for some direction from the board. What's their target? I think overall, it's going to be a tough budget year. And if we don't take the steps we need to take this year, next year is going to be even tougher, and the year after is going to be even more difficult. I think a lot of the decisions that have been made at town meeting in terms of some of the capital, and I don't necessarily mean the replacement, the things that are on replacement schedule, the larger items, the one-off items, a lot of that capital now has come due and now has become debt. And it's a lot. There's no way to look at it, beyond simply the public safety facility debt, which we assumed. And somebody asked me the question today, well, I thought that when we said the public safety facility was going to be built, and the presentation said this was going to be the annual cost of the taxpayers, per year moving forward to fund the public safety, but God, my tax bill looks a lot bigger than that. Well, the problem is that the declining, we looked at that information, and that scenario was presented, in a static environment where school debt was declining and the public safety debt was going to come in and a little more than fill what was available. Unfortunately, there's a lot of other projects and a lot of other capital and debt that town meeting has also approved, which half filled the hole before you put public safety into it. So, again, a lot of the decisions of town meeting, have kind of come home to roost. a little bit, and we'll be talking about that on Tuesday night with the selectmen. I think like I said, we've got some decisions to make. The board's got to decide what their target is, and then it becomes a value discussion about the things, that are important. I'm sure there's going to be discussions even after the selectmen set their target. Well, can we put this back in? Okay, well, then what are we going to take out? I think the other issue, just to continue with the good news, is there's some unknowns. There's things we don't know yet. We don't know what the regional school number is going to be yet for Algonquin. We have some ideas, but again, that's going to be something that we'll know for certain probably near the end of the process, around the third week of January, when the governor releases his House Bill 1. We don't have a solid number yet on a lot of our benefits. We have a great idea on our health insurance, and that number is a lot lower than it has been in years past at this time in the process. I don't see that number changing a whole lot. So we're not going to get any relief from that number. We don't have our retirement number yet from Worcester County. So I don't know what that number is going to look like. Again, we're carrying estimates, and even if the selectmen say 7%, 6%, 5%, some of these unknowns could make hitting those targets more difficult. So any cuts and reductions that we look at in this budget process right now, even setting a target number, could prove to be difficult getting down to once some of these unknowns come into focus. So it continues to be a process, and I appreciate the speed and that you're moving through things and trying to keep up with the process. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more direction, and we can provide a little bit more detail and start to get into the specifics of what some of these things mean after Tuesday night.
Mark, we've spoken, the issue regarding the future at this, the next town meeting. I look at, some of us had a look at it, and Frank and I, for instance, at one of the formula, one of the sheets. We'll come back to you so that we can, based on what's coming, and based on what we can expect in normal operating increases.
Right.
I say without amputating. In other
Right.
words, because we run a business here. May it be 2% or 3% a year, to make some assumptions. And that we have a forecast for a period. And Frank and we had a look at that we have something like that for the town, so that they can see what the forecasted tax increase is going to be next year, the year after that, the year after that, so that, because we basically have a good idea based on what we have. And so we will, we just think based on exactly what you
Sure.
what you alluded to earlier, because
Sure.
this is not good. What I'm saying to you, it's
Right.
good, but to answer it,
Yeah.
we need to answer it in a response that's positive, in the sense this is what we're looking
Right,
at. To
okay.
do it a little bit
Yeah.
your point's totally valid.
Yeah.
Things changed.
Yeah. No,
But
like
we
I
now
said,
incorpor-
because you're taking a look at a picture in time, and, and based on where we are, this is what it looks like. The other half of the picture, we talk about the expense piece in that, expenses do go up.
Yep.
The revenue side, is a problem, because it has all but flatlined. The state really is committed to level or minor increases. Remember, if the state says it's going to give you 1%, don't get all excited. That's about $40,000 to the town without backing out any of the charges that may be increased on the backside. Motor vehicle excise is flattened out on us, which was a fairly good source of revenue. People aren't buying new cars as much. Our new growth is extremely low. We don't have any new developments. When Madison Place was put in, we got about 2.5 years worth of new growth out of that, which did, help us for a little bit. And quite honestly, I'm not advocating for any project or anything, but some new growth would really help us through these next several years as we try to accommodate, some of this public safety debt and some of this other debt that we've also assumed.
Point's valid because we can't basically, like in any business, we can forecast basically what we think
Sure.
the next 5 years is gonna be as far as revenue is concerned. 'Cause we basically know.
Right.
The same as far as debt. I'm talking about existing debt, existing capital, what we have right now.
But we
And that-
also,
what we-
know what future capital items, if town meeting decides they want to buy X, we know what the value of that will be in terms of additional debt
Okay,
as well.
but if I may finish, so
Sure.
that we have a format that we would advise you because we would look at that with you. Frank and I would probably meet with you with the agreement with everybody else, to have a look at something where the town can see what the situation is.
Right.
And what they're voting for.
Right,
So that they have that perspective.
right,
And that we can speak to it, that this is where we're at.
Right.
Because we cannot have what we have right now is, okay, this year's difficult. We basically look at it and say, okay, we discussed it, and that, okay, next year's gonna be tough. The year after that's gonna be tough. We can't keep on kicking things down the road. And that we really look at this. And, if next year at this point in time looks like X, put it in. And so, because it sets the platform for other items we want to add in this, but we think, just based on what you said earlier, this is going to be an issue at the town meeting. And we just need to put something in place that we can
Right.
say, look, we are not going to do it again. We'll have this format for you. We'll talk about it that
The
way.
presentation that we have for the selectmen on Tuesday night is gonna frame, I think, the presentation that we will provide for the budget at town meeting, and begins to focus a little bit on, the capital and the impacts. And, it feels good when 250 people in the room decide, we wanna do this project, we wanna do this and everything and that, but, we need to understand what that means when it actually shows up as debt, when actually it shows up as an expense, when it translates into an increase, on the tax bill. And, again, I think, that needs to be understood. So what I've said tonight, what I've said at the selectmen's meeting, what I'll say Tuesday, what I said to the department heads, the message is gonna be consistent, for the next 3+ months. So when people walk into town meeting, hopefully they've got a very good understanding of where we sit, and it's pretty much just a refresher course before we start going through and looking at the budgets.
Let me ask you, before Frank, let me just ask you.
Sure.
On the point of the meeting on next week for the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
It is really, where do you, we need to have a decision as soon, you know that. We need
Yes.
to move on. We need to have a decision from the Board of Selectmen. We have
Sure.
to take, we need to get a stand from them on that. Do you think it's gonna happen?
Well, that's the second to last slide where we point blank ask for a decision. So, we do need something, moving forward. We need to have a target. And, that information, so when the packets will be public, they'll be put up online on Friday, so you'll be able to have access to the information, to the PowerPoint. You'll be able to see that information and have that. Again, we're looking at this point, until the selectmen make some decisions, we're not gonna get into a lot of detail. It's DPW budget was requested at this. At a 7% budget, it looks like, this is your bottom line number you need to hit at 6 and at 5. As you get closer to 5, we start talking about, bodies and hours. But I'm not gonna sit here and have conversations as to where those are and what departments, because, we've had these discussions in the past in my career, and I'm not, it turns into morale issues, because if they don't come to fruition, people still feel, well, you were willing to put me on the chopping block.
No, it's okay.
So,
We will see
So-
what is presented on next week.
The
Frank, you had a
selectmen will have
question?
enough information to move forward with some type of decision.
So my question is around the borrowings, can you just walk us through at a very high level when you anticipate the large chunks being issued?
So one large chunk is already issued. There's a $7 million bond that is permanently borrowed for the public safety facility already.
In how many years and at what interest rate?
I don't have the interest rate, but those are 30 years,
Okay.
okay? There is another $7 million, maybe slightly over $7 million, that was temporarily borrowed. It's a temporary bond at this point.
The bond anticipation?
Yes, it's a ban, and we're probably looking to permanently borrow that in May. And again, that would be for 30 years. Now, depending on the impact of the funding and everything in that, we can stretch that out and carry that temporary, the ban for a little while and simply just pay the interest.
Sure.
We've got to figure out what the benefits, the pros and cons of doing that are. The other issue that we have is, right now, we're carrying, a AAA bond rating, which is the highest bond rating we can carry, and a lot of that is reflective of because we don't have a lot of reserves. The case we made with the reserves is all of our unused, our unused levy capacity as our reserves. The bond company agreed, and they granted us the AAA. This budget is going to cut into our reserves and that unused levy capacity. So my concern is that, if we do that with this budget, and the next budget, then we cut into this unused levy capacity a little bit more, we're weakening any argument when we go out to bond for us maintaining that AAA. I'm already trying to explore, based on some existing projects that have been out to bid, give me the difference between a AA plus and a AAA. So I have an idea of what the interest rates and what, the benefits of maybe doing it earlier would be. But again, got to be sensitive to the impacts that it's going to have on the tax rate too.
So we have 7 that's been done,
You've got seven
Q2.
anticipated, and then I think the last one probably wouldn't be issued until a year later at the earliest. So probably probably around
Q3.
May of '20, which would be a cleanup for whatever residuals once the project closes out for public safety.
In roughly how much?
I'd say roughly 4, maybe.
So it's 7, 7, and 4.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know your point on the rating is very valid. Frank and I attended the session and we talked to Victor Medeiros, if you know who he is, he's basically in charge of the ratings in this area.
Yes. Yeah.
And carefully looked at the formulas they use and what they do. And we kind of thought about our own situation, and your point's very valid. We would be, the AAA it could stay, it could not stay.
Right.
I mean, and we really,
Yeah.
based on this current situation, I think we're running a risk.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I
we
think, Frank, you would support that? Yeah.
Yeah, we save significant amounts of money in interest with the AAA on the first borrowing, and, I mean, a bond rating isn't really any good to you unless you're doing borrowing, right? And so here's the biggest project that we've seen in quite some time, non-school related. This is what you need it for. And so it would be great to be able to maintain it, through the remainder of our borrowing. That's really what you need it for. So, but we need to have a plan B as well.
Do you have a sense as to how market levels of interest rates for these bonds have changed over the last 18 months?
Yeah, I don't, Brian, has, deals with a financial advisor that as we start to get close, we have conversations and, where we think the best time is to do something. And that's one of the factors, based on the market, we can get, with our bond rating, with the way things are going now's the time to permanently bond. And it's all about timing. Jason Malinowski came to the selectmen the other night and talked about the public safety project, and he said, thank God we bid the project when we did, because it was before Trump instituted a lot of these tariffs and the tariff on steel, it would have been, we would have paid a lot more money for that building if we had to pay the new steel prices. So we basically got that in before that hit. So again, it's all timing.
And you're hitting on exactly kind of my area of interest, which is how much do the debt payments change
Yes,
if interest rates bump up 0.5%, up 1%, up
Right.
1.5 over the next 18 months?
Yep.
And just making sure we're aware of that impact as well.
Re-
These relatively low rates, I suspect it may be more than people anticipate.
Right, and so you try to balance that versus bonding now
Right.
and the impact on the tax rate. I mean, it's significant enough as it is now, but, we're trying to do it gradually, not do it all at once. Here you go.
Understood.
So, but it is, it's all timing, and, I'm happy to have, Brian and I'd be happy to have those conversations with you.
If there was a desire to place the debt in advance when the payments need to be made, is that even possible? My sense from earlier conversations was it's really not.
I don't, it's not prudent, and I'm not sure that it would be possible.
Okay.
Mark, looking at the debt,
Yes.
when is the next fall off, if I may call it a fall off? I mean, when is the next, when do we have, where are we dumping, if I may say so, where are we getting rid of some of the debt? Where's the next big blob coming down, negative for us?
There really isn't a next big block. I mean, your next big block came off this year for SBAB. And the bad news, the good news is that debt was coming off. The bad news is that the SBAB funding to help offset some of that debt also disappeared.
Which was
So-
roughly 1.2 million, I think.
Which is roughly 1.2 million. So
And that's a subsidy or a refund, a reimbursement from the state?
it is, yeah, through
But
school
that's
building
water,
assistance.
that's a done deal. I mean,
Yeah.
if we look over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we don't see any,
You'll have some, I don't have the debt schedule with me, Adrian, but there is
nothing
nothing
big.
coming off in
nothing
that big,
Yep.
in those big chunks. There'll be some smaller things, that will be coming off. But,
Okay.
again, this public safety facility debt is gonna be with us for 29 years. But it will get more manageable as we move forward. It's just simply that the next 3 years, as we assume all of the debt for the project, is gonna be difficult.
there's nothing big coming off the schools. I mean, I don't know why I'm asking the question. There's nothing big coming off there.
So Woodward finishes, I believe, in 2023 or 2024.
Yeah.
But again, it's not, I'd have to go back and look at the schedule. Remember when Brian and I put this together? But I'd have to go back and take a look, but I don't think there's any big drop-off. That's,
At
there'll
least
be
not
some,
for the next 4 or 5 years.
yeah, there'll be some smaller stuff, but nothing, no big chunks.
Okay, can I just ask you, do we have a list of, warrant articles? When can we look at that?
So I've begun to compile the warrant. I hate to say that it's not huge. I don't have it's a lot of the standard articles that I've got right now.
Anything exceptional?
I've got some placeholders. You've got one citizen petition that I have. So it's not a lot, right now and everything in that, but as soon as I have a draft of that compiled, I will begin to forward that around so people have an idea, at least some of the placeholders I have. I don't have anything from planning yet. I don't know if there's any zoning articles that they've anticipated, so.
Yeah, I'm basically asking for something that's gonna take a lot of, review. If there's anything big, then let us have it as soon as you can, so we
Yeah,
can work
no,
on it. The other stuff,
I
the
will.
normal stuff is fine.
I will. And again, assuming 4 or 5 CPC projects, but I don't have anything significant yet.
Maybe I missed it, but when did you say that you're gonna post when did you say that the information for the 5, 6, and 7% was gonna be posted?
I said Friday, but
That's
that would be tomorrow.
Right,
yes.
is that gonna happen tomorrow?
I hope so,
Good.
yes. Yeah.
I wondered.
Yes, no, that will, yeah, so the packets get posted,
Great,
you know, on, for the Tuesday meetings get posted on Friday.
good, thank
Yep.
you.
Mark, for the members of advisory,
Yes,
I mean, because when you posted, people PDF everything,
yes,
the request from my side is
Mhm.
that you forward us the Excels where it's possible.
Sure.
So it's just, we can work on it. That's a general request from us. So
Sure.
just because we want to, mark something already tonight, we work on it, keep it for the next time, see where we're going with it.
sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, I will ask Brian to do that.
Any other questions to Mark at this point in time? Yes, you have something.
I do, yeah, I just wanted to get clarification on something I took
Sure.
notes on last time. The public safety building.
Yes.
Percentage of the increase, is it 2.5 or 2.75%?
2.75,
It's 2.75?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you take a look at, quite honestly, the public safety debt being 2.75, and I think if you, trying to remember my figures from the presentation, but I believe it's about 1% of, of a tax increase is the value of the new debt, non-excluded, that's been taken on besides public safety for some of the recreation projects and things like that. When I talk about the hole being filled a little bit before public safety, so those are some of the other things. So that's adding, again, 1% onto the debt. So those things have to be considered. So that'll be laid out in the presentation so that you can
Okay.
get an idea
Okay.
as to, when you look at that total of 9-point-something%, that was the value of everything that was asked for, in the operating and the capital, you'll understand kind of how that breaks down. So.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Can imagine you're very busy. Brian's very busy. I don't
been-
get easily phones.
It's
So no,
it's been a little busy, yes.
No, good luck. That's all
So,
I can say.
Yeah.
Good luck. Putting a lot of work in.
yeah, so.
And
tune
I
in-
know
tu-
bec-
Tune in on Tuesday, and, the selectmen, we are gonna push, for them to give us that guidance. I know that you're striving to wrap things up,
Gonna be tough.
sometime, middle, third week of January. And all I'm telling you is that by the time you think you've got everything where you want it to be, we'll be getting some answers on some of these unknowns, in the next week or so. So those are gonna be, there's gonna be some things that are this is gonna be moving parts all the way, probably, up until the first week of February. Yeah, so,
Thank you, Mark.
okay.
Thank you very much for
All
the
right.
work you're doing.
Yes, have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Okay, next point on our agenda, we're not going to discuss, I will take it off in the future. So that's a mute point. If I move on to general, can we approve the minutes circulated October 23, November 13th? You will see I edited them. So, Ravi? Sorry, excuse me. What are you taking off the agenda? Financial model of Kathy Cook. I mean, we've had it on a long time, and it's not, nothing is happening, and we're gonna take it off. We'll do it at another time.
I'd like to speak to that. Can I speak to that?
You're mostly welcome. Yes, sure you can. It's an open meeting, it's a public meeting.
Dorian Jasinski, 33 Presidential Drive. That item has been on the agenda since July, I believe,
Yes.
every single month. Is there a reason we are not getting this document? This document is what Kathy based her speech at town meeting on about the cost of the public safety building. This should be a public document, and it should be available to us. So if she's not going to present it, I am going to do a public records request, just so you have a heads up, because I want to see the document. She talked at town meeting about how much this public safety building was going to impact and to us, the taxpayers. Yet we have not seen this document. And when I was an advisory, we asked for this. We've been asking for this for 2 years, and we still don't have it. So I am putting in a public records request tomorrow, just so you have a heads up on that.
Yeah, I think, I do want to say that we added on the agenda because she did, in actual fact, respond to us that she would present it. We just haven't had the opportunity, and, it's just staying on the agenda, so I'm just gonna take it off for the time being, and I think you can do what you think you need to do. So the reason why we put it on was because she volunteered to present it.
She volunteered to present it last year as well.
Yeah.
So this has been going on for a very long time, and yet we still have not seen this document or this study or any of this work that she presented a speech to us telling us we could afford this public safety building. And you are now seeing the impact of that study, that statement, that speech she gave at town meeting, and yet we have no information, and advisory never saw that. And she got up and spoke about it with the permission of the chair, but we still haven't seen it. And I have a problem with that. So I'm looking at this since July. It's been on this agenda, and it's never been presented. So I'm, enough is enough, Adrian. I'm sorry, but I have to do a public records request on this.
Yes, the reason why I'm taking it off is because, it's on the agenda every time, and if something happens, if she comes forward and said she wants to do it, I'll put it back on the agenda.
Okay.
I did request that again, and so if we, but I'm taking it off until I get a positive response for a date when we can do it, because we will do it. But for the timing, I'm gonna take it off.
Well, she's going to have to present it because I'm going to request it.
Thank you for your,
Thanks.
thank you.
If I were to add to the observation, it's that she did request an agenda item back in July. If we don't have a placeholder for the discussion, our understanding of open meeting law is that it cannot be a topic of discussion for that meeting. So the intent in keeping it there was not to deceive the public, but to allow ourselves the opportunity to discuss it when she's ready. So I think that's all I can really add to that.
Thank you for that.
And I also think it's, you have what she said at town meeting. That's, if you get the video of town meeting, you can find out. I also think that she was simply going to report on the original plan, which wasn't hers. It was John Butler's. And so, you can ask for it, but John's not, no longer doing community business here. So I don't know what you will get. I don't think there's a deliberate desire to withhold. It's just that she's had various reasons that she hasn't been able to come.
Yeah, but I think I would prefer to not have speculate on this any further, because I do have the model that John Butler had, which was for a period before then. So I
That's
just
what
like
she's
to,
talking about.
yeah. So we'll just leave it there.
Well, you may not need to do a public records request, because that's really what's being discussed, not Kathy standing up at town meeting. If it already exists, you can, Adrian, then you can present it. You can make that.
No, I want to be very clear. What I have was 3 years before that. So we were not presented with anything that was updated there, was updated for that meeting. I don't have anything.
I think the key for me is that there may be a model that folks may have had access to.
That's right.
What we do not have access to are the assumptions that supported the assertion that was made at town meeting. And without those assumptions, it's difficult for us, impossible for us, to assess what the impact would have been, or, how to reconcile what was suggested at town meeting with where we're at today.
Thank you. Let's move on. Can we approve the minutes of October 23rd? Whoever recorded the minutes can move that it be approved.
Yes, actually, Frank pointed out one correction in the header. It has the wrong date on the second page. So is it possible to move with that
With that amendment?
with that amendment?
Yes.
I move that we accept the minutes as amended. I move that we accept the amendments to the meeting notes of October 23rd.
Thank you. All in favor?
Second.
Second? Oh, sorry, yes. All in favor? Done. Minutes for November 13th.
The only thing on the November 13th one that I want to change is I had 2.5% on the public safety building. I just got clarification from Mark that it's 2.75, and that matches up with Ravi's document as well. So that's the only amendment I would like to make. So I move to approve the minutes
As amended.
as amended for November 13th.
Second. All in favor? Are you in favor?
I was not present.
You may vote even though you were not present.
I'm in favor.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, standing reports. I'm going to, as far as my side is concerned, I first want to point out dates for the next meetings that have not changed. So next meeting is December 5th, which is the day after the board meeting. The 11th, as was on the schedule. Now, we would probably have to have another meeting before Christmas. The Board of Selectmen are meeting on the 18th, again. And based on what I think is happening with the budget, there may be another discussion about the budget on the 18th. Unfortunately, I'm flying out on the 19th, but there's no problem. I asked Frank, the chair, if we have to have a meeting there, and he agreed to. So I just want to give you a heads up that. Tuesday? Yeah, the Board of Selectmen are meeting on a Tuesday, of course, which is the 18th. I speak on a correction, I'm pretty sure. But depending on what happens, we can have a meeting before that meeting or a meeting just after that. But I'm going to leave that in the air because we need to see what, how things are working out on the budget side with the board of selectmen. Then we have January 8, 10, and 15. January 15th, we need to close out. We want to close out on January 15th because coming back to it, that is when we need to wrap up what needs to be done. To that point, we need to, I will draft, with your permission, together with Frank, the Advisory and Finance Committee report. It should be, I got leeway to get it in first week of January. I can work on it over the holidays, and Frank will object, but we will draft it before the time and circulate it to all the members of the committee. We will coordinate how it's done within the open meeting law. And Frank will coordinate and we'll get other points in, circulate it, work on it. I need to have that in first week of January. And really would ask cooperation in that regard. We'll do an email in that regard to remind everybody. But we will work on that. I do want to have permission from the members here tonight that I can send an email to the Board of Selectmen tomorrow that we strongly urge them to take a position next week at their meeting on the 4th. We are pressed for time, and they need to work at this. They're getting the documents before the time. We really need a decision next week. Can I have permission from the members that we that I send an email on our behalf? Everybody okay?
Sure.
Yes. The same goes for at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, both Mark and I spoke to the problems that are involved in getting everything ready for the annual town meeting in March. The Board of Selectmen were receptive to it, and they indicated that they would consider an article to to move the town meeting later in the year. You heard Mark earlier, so this is there's just not time to get this done properly. And that was discussed, so I want to have permission from the members here as well that I sent on behalf of this committee an email to the Board of Selectmen that we urge them to, in actual fact, do an article, that they go to the town meeting to not change the Saturday meeting, but to move the meeting to the end of April. That is done, Northborough has it the last week of April, most other towns are late. If we could possibly do that, and I have Mr. Jim Haggerty wants to comment on that before we do anything. Please, Jim, go ahead.
Jim Haggerty, I rise as a resident, also the town clerk. Knowing that that article was essentially pretty much a verbatim copy of the Westboro article, and I've attended Westboro town meetings which seem to function, has there been any communication between this committee or the selectman's office to see how Westboro successfully uses that meeting date? I'm curious as to what you've discovered, because it seems to work for them, and I'm hearing nothing but the sky is falling here. Maybe a good idea to change it. I'm just curious, has there been any discussion?
I did speak to their chair of their finance committee. I couldn't get a good read on it. I'm just saying to you, I'll go back again, but their town manager or town administrator just, he's leaving. And so I will follow it up again, but based on what they told me, they have similar problems. There are definitely items that they don't have feedback on. They handle it in a different way. They accommodate it in the way they do their budgets. They, estimate, anticipate. On the other hand, if you go and look at their finances, they do not have the same structure as what we have. They have they have spare capacity, if I may put it like that. And we just don't have it at the moment. And so we are cutting very fine here at the moment. If you look at the way we're doing the budget, so I spoke to 3, 4, 5 towns. Most of the people are running, some are in May. That includes some towns who really are doing a good job, who are best practices. Westboro is very, very early, if I may say so. So if I look at best practices and I look at the issues that we have as far as getting figures available, that Mark mentioned earlier, that would be our recommendation. The Board of Selectmen can make the decision. But that's all I can tell you.
Thank you.
It is the Board of Selectmen's decision, but I think we would like to, if I have your agreement, is to just urge them to consider that option to move it later. If I have agreement. And I shall do more work, but I checked with 4 towns at least. Westboro at the moment is difficult to get clear answers. The chair, I just want to say, Jim, the chair of their finance committee is new on it. She was not involved in the finance committee before. So I couldn't get clear answers, really, at that one town. But I have other towns that are later. Thank you. Frank and only Frank and I attended the ATFC annual meeting, which was probably, 3 or 4 weeks ago, which is the MMA's Association for Town Finance Committees. It was excellent. It's not my first time there, and the learning curve is pretty steep. Frank was there for the first time with me, which was fantastic. It's a pity we couldn't have more people there, but it really should be a driver for next year. And as far as best practices are concerned and what other towns do and how things are done, the presentations were very, very good. I'm going to ask Frank to give some comments on how he found it for the first time. And
So it was a good day. 3, 4 different sessions, budgeting, looking at the credit rating process, best practices, and then also financial policies and procedures that, good sessions, good group of people, wide range of experiences of the members associating, and all in all, a good day. Certainly some good takeaways.
do you think there's work for us to be done, Frank?
I think we're in process.
Good. The other point I want to raise is I've had a request from John Butler whether he should still maintain the Shutterfly site, and I promised to give him an answer, and I've been lax in that. We have basically we have all records at town, all the old Shutterfly records are captured. It's not all public, but anybody can ask for it. Also, thank you, Tim, for some of the work he did, duplicated some of the work that was done by the FLOM, but thank you for your work as well. So everything there is covered. We do not use the email, and the town has got an excellent site. We're posting most of our things there now. Everything is basically available, and our emails are public records if people want to see it. Our emails, in fact, are only organizational of nature, and so I want to have support that I can. That is if anybody is still here, still using it, but I would really think we can shut that down and let John know that you can close that out. And I want to have. I'll move that. I want your agreement that I can do it. Frank? Judy? Yep, Sonny? Sure. Okay? Okay, I will let him know. Thank you. I'm not going to, as far as the annual town meeting timeline is concerned, Mark responded, he talked to that. I can just say to you that the members, what is very important is we have most of the large budgets. We are working through before we get feedback from the Board of Selectmen as to where they stand. Again, we will take our own position regarding the budgets, whether things are getting kicked down the road, what's in, what's not in. We will do it. It's very important that the documents that we have at the moment, we'll get updates to it, and as I asked, the people who are making changes, we want to see the deltas. In other words, we want to see where they're making the changes. But we will work through this again, the major items. The other one is that I asked Mark to speak to all what I call the administrative budgets, the selectmen. There are a lot of other small items that really falls within the administration here, that he presents that as a package to us as well, probably at the next meeting as soon as we have time. Any comments from any of the members? It's not, it's my report, but it's our report, really. Anything else? Public comment. Tim, why are you staying on your chair tonight? Cannot be. Thank you for you following up. I saw the emails that you had with Tom Flom. We're getting there, slowly but surely. It's a big step forward. For us to publish all our documents in original format, and the one thing we still have to, it's the 2 agendas, where that's going. We're still working on whether we can spool it without having to redo it, but we really can't, because that's something that really is worth the, Mr. Hegarty, and he may speak to it, because we now publish it, and I have to say, Jim, thank you very much for your side, and Michelle, being able to not PDF everything. However, when we get to the minutes, then we need to have that with the minutes as well. So do we send all of it to you again? Or is it possible to connect can we spool, do we have to send it all over again together with the minutes? I would really, just that we know where we stand with it, because I have to tell you, the way you have been cooperating in this, I want to say it publicly that this is just fantastic. Very good, very nice, thank you.
Well, thank you. There are at least 3 issues that we have to separate here along the way. And I say this primarily for the benefit of the people that are watching this on TV and then might bring it forward. There are a lot of misconceptions as to what constitutes a public record and those kind of things. Agendas are regulated by the open meeting law. Packages are not. Packages are not, are a courtesy and a convenience by a committee, but they are independent of the agendas themselves. Okay, so they're actually 2 separate issues. There's no requirement to publish materials that will be disclosed at a meeting. Frankly, most towns do not do that.
Yep.
So I just want to separate that, so those are 2 different animals. And they're different, and it's important to understand that distinction, because it specifically ties in terms of the 48-hour posting notice. That we're required to post the notice of the meeting and the agenda a minimum of 48 hours in advance in 2 locations, but then meeting packages can be posted at any time afterwards, because it's just a courtesy. The 2 are totally independent and separate. And there's a tremendous misconception in the public that people have joined those 2 together, and they're not. They're separate issues. So let's take it to the second piece about minutes themselves. Both the open meeting law and the town bylaw have certain requirements in terms of minutes. The open meeting law, production with so many meetings after the initial meeting, or so many days. That and there's a criteria, there's a checklist which I've sent to all of you, and if any of the public would like to see it, I'd be happy to give it to them to say what we are legally required to include on the minutes of a meeting. Independent of that, part of the state requirement says that documents used at the meeting have to be listed on the minutes. And again, there's a tremendous amount of misinformation as to what it constitutes use at a meeting. There are 3 legs of that, and frankly, I always want to look at the paper to be sure of that, but 1 is it's discussed at the meeting, 2, it's physically present, and I forget the 3rd off the top of my head. So it's in the fine print of the stuff. So that's what needs to be listed on the minutes themselves. Our town bylaw has comparable stuff, but also requires the committees to deliver those documents to the clerk's office so that we retain the minutes ourselves. The state requires that minutes be produced, but it's silent as to who retains them. The assumption is, in every other city and town, the producing entity is responsible. So you as the chair would be responsible, and at the end of your term, you turn it off to the next chair, and there you go. The reason that I requested a bylaw to make the clerk's office responsible for this is the reality is that one chair moves, the minutes just disappear. We're required by the state record retention section of the Secretary of State's office to retain minutes. Agendas are only retained for, I think, a year, unless there's some litigation. I'll have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's only a year. But minutes have to be retained in perpetuity. So we've taken that a step further to say that we want to retain the documents that are discussed at the meetings. So I'm sorry I've just told you how to build the clock, but I wanted to, instead of what time it was, but I wanted to throw those issues out there to say that we have essentially 2 sets of documents we're talking about here. The agenda and the package of documents that you would like the public to see, that you would use in preparation for your meeting, for your agenda. And then we have the after the fact, the minutes themselves and the documents that fit within the definition of the documents used at the meeting. They're two separate animals, they're two separate issues. Frankly, what we've been struggling downstairs to do is to get boards and committees up to speed, and we've had a lot of private conversation with some boards and committees that are not in compliance with the open meeting law to try to get everybody up to speed. So once we get everybody up to speed on that, then we're gonna segue to the next part to start getting those people to produce the documents. So we can't, if you had 10 documents, send spreadsheets that you posted with your agenda as a courtesy to the public to see, but then when you posted your minutes, if only 3 of those were actually used at the meeting, only 3 get posted on the back end. And that's, there really have to be separate submissions to do that.
Question that I still have is, in the minutes, we refer to the documents. I just want to make sure that the actual documents have to be, have to go with that as well.
Yes, the documents need to come to us unless there's a physical reason why they can't, and then we have to list the location where they're stored.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but frankly, we are focusing on trying to get some of the committees, and frankly, there are some boards and committees that are almost a year behind. And we're holding a lot of hands to try to get that resolved before we get the icing on the cake, so to speak. So,
You can at least say that we're doing a decent job on advisory.
oh, you guys are right on the money, and I gotta tell you, I've talked to so many of the committees that it just makes sense to review your minutes from the prior meetings at the subsequent meeting. It's clean, it's simple, it just makes a lot of sense, and it would solve a lot of problems for a lot of people, a lot of committees, and especially the committees that get dinged with the open meeting law. And it's like sunshine, it's a ray of sunshine, everybody wins. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. I move that we adjourn. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.